Saturday afternoon, July. The kind of Raleigh heat that warms your beer before you finish half of it. Vern is standing over a charcoal grill in his backyard, not a new Weber, that same round black one he's had since 2013, with the paint peeling on the side. 3 patties on the grate, one for him, one for June, one for the grandkid who's inside watching something on the iPad with the volume too loud. The neighbor Greg, 55, still working, manager of something at an office Vern never quite understood, is leaning on the chain-link fence with a Budweiser in his hand. He asks the question everyone asks a retired man with a paid-off house and a mowed lawn on a Tuesday. So Vern, what's the damage every month? Vern gives him the number. Says it with the ease of a man who's answered that question 20 times. Union pension, Social Security, no rent, no mortgage. Greg whistles, shakes his head. Says he can't wait. Says it sounds like freedom. Vern flips a patty with the spatula, hears the grease pop on the coals, and nods. Because it is. And for 4 years, it was exactly that. Vern's numbers lined up, his spending dropped, no gas for the commute, no eating out for lunch, no clothes nobody needs. The spreadsheet he made before retiring in blue ink, in a notebook that June thinks he threw away but is still sitting in the nightstand drawer, got almost everything right. Inside, June is standing at the kitchen counter, both hands flat on the granite. 2 envelopes in front of her, one from the insurance company, one from the county assessor's office. She hasn't opened either one. She doesn't need to. She knows what they say, not the exact number, the direction, because for the last 3 Januaries, the direction has been the same. And the Social Security adjustment never caught up. Vern has been retired for 8 years. He spends less than he earned. That part is true, and the data backs it up. But every January, the slice of his budget, he actually controls restaurants, travel, a gift for the grandkids shrinks a little, and every January, the slice he can't cancel, can't negotiate, and can't switch providers on insurance, Medicare, property tax grows a little more. He hasn't done the math on that split yet. June has. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to follow Vern at 3.62, 70, and 78. Same house, same pension, same Social Security check adjusted for inflation. And by the end, you'll understand why the most dangerous assumption in retirement isn't how much you spend. It's which expenses you think are going to shrink and which ones were never going to. Let's go back 8 years. Last day of work. Vern walks off a job site for the final time. 40 years pulling wire for the IBEW. His hands know the inside of a junction box better than most people know their own kitchen cabinets. His pension is locked $2,800 a month, every month, for the rest of his life. Social Security kicks in at 62 early, reduced at about $1,600 a month. That's $4,400 a month before he touches savings. After taxes, closer to $4,000. The house is paid off, assessed at about $280,000. Savings in the bank, $120,000. Not a fortune. Enough. The night before his last shift, Vern sat at the dining room table and opened that blue ink notebook. 1 column for income, 1 column for expenses, line by line, mortgage 0, car payment 0, groceries, gas, electric, water, insurance, Medicare, property tax. He landed on a number, about $4,000 a month out, $4,000 a month in, maybe $400 a month of breathing room. Every line in that notebook was correct. Every single one. The problem wasn't what Vern wrote down. It's what the notebook didn't have a line for. There are 3 expenses that weren't in it. Not because Vern forgot them, because they didn't exist yet at the numbers they'd become. For the first 4 years, the plan works. Not just works out, performs. Vern spends less than he projected. And it's not because he's being careful. It's because the expenses that went away when he stopped working were bigger than he expected. The commute alone was costing him about $3,200 a year in gas and maintenance. 40 minutes each way to the job site, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. That's a lot of gas. That's a lot of oil changes. That's a brake job every 18 months that he doesn't need anymore. Lunch on the job, sandwich, shop, diner, gas station, coffee that tasted like it was brewed during the previous administration added up to roughly $2,600. Work boots, jeans, the kind of clothes you destroy every 6 months on a construction site, another $800. Total gone. About $6,600 a year that just vanished the day he turned in his badge. New costs showed up. They always do. Home projects that Vern finally has time for: the bookshelf, for the grandson's room, the deck boards that needed replacing for 3 years. The bathroom vanity June mentioned in 2019. that he's only now getting around to. A trip to Myrtle Beach with June every spring, 4 nights at the same motel they've been going to since before the grandkid was born. Birthday gifts that keep getting more expensive because the kid keeps getting older and tablets cost more than action figures. But the new costs are smaller than the old ones. By about $3,000 a year, Vern is running ahead of his own projection. He checks the notebook every few months. Not religiously, more like the way you check the oil on a car that's running smooth, just to confirm what he already feels. The numbers look good, better than good. And this isn't just Vern. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey, Americans 65 and older spend an average of $61,432 a year. That's the lowest of any age group in the country, lower than the 35 to 44 crowd, who are deep in the mortgage and daycare years, lower than the 45 to 54 peak, where families are paying for everything at once, college, a house, and their own retirement contributions. The data says exactly what Vern feels. You spend less when you stop working. There's a researcher named David Blanchett who put a name to this pattern. He calls it the retirement spending smile. You spend more in early retirement travel, hobbies, catching up on the life you postponed while you were punching a clock. Then spending drops year after year as you slow down. Then it curves back up at the very end when healthcare takes over. The middle of that smile, the dip, is where most retirees feel comfortable, where the numbers feel manageable, where the notebook looks like it was right all along. Vern is in the dip, and from the dip, everything looks fine. But there's a word for what's happening underneath those numbers. And it's a word most retirees never hear until the damage is already baked in. Economists call it consumption displacement. It doesn't mean your expenses went down. It means they traded places. The commute money became the home project money. The lunch money became the grandkid money. The work clothes money became the Myrtle Beach money. The total went down, but the composition changed. And here's the part that matters. The expenses you eliminated were optional. You chose to drive to work because you had a job. The expenses that replaced them split into 2 categories. Some are still optional. You choose to go to the beach, but some are not. You do not choose to pay your insurance premium. You do not choose your Medicare rate. You do not choose what the county assesses your home at. 4 years in, the split between what Vern controls and what he doesn't is still tilted in his favor. The optional side is bigger, the mandatory side is smaller, but the tilt is changing, slowly, quietly, in a direction that doesn't show up if you're only watching the total. Here's where the assumption breaks. Everyone, Vern, Greg, the financial planning websites, the retirement calculators, uses one number for inflation, one rate, applied to everything. As if your groceries and your Medicare premium and your homeowner's insurance all move at the same speed. They don't. Let's start with healthcare, because it's the biggest and the quietest. When Vern retired, his standard Medicare Part B premium was about $170 a month. In 2026, that number is $202.90. That's a 9.7% increase in a single year. Just the premium, not a procedure, not a prescription, the ticket to walk in the door. In the same year, Social Security gave retirees a cost of living adjustment of 2.8%. For the average retired worker, that translated to about $56 extra a month. Sounds fine, until you realize the Medicare Part B increase alone ate $17.90 of it. Nearly a third of the raise consumed by one line item before Vern bought a single bottle of aspirin. And this isn't a one-year glitch. According to the actuarial firm Milliman, medical inflation has averaged 1.7 percentage points above the general consumer price index for as far back as the data goes. A report from HealthView Services put the long-term healthcare inflation rate at roughly 5.8% a year against a projected Social Security cost of living adjustment averaging just 2.4%. Read that again. The income adjustment designed to help retirees keep up with rising costs grows at 2.4%. The single largest expense category in retirement grows at 5.8%. Every year, the gap gets wider, and it compounds. Fidelity publishes an annual estimate of what a 65-year-old retiree will spend on healthcare for the rest of their life. In 2026, that number hit $185,500. For a couple, $371,000 When Fidelity first published this benchmark in 2002, the estimate was $80,000. It has more than doubled in 24 years. And the pace is accelerating 4% in 2024, 5% in 2025, 7.5% this year. That's one expense. Now let's open the first envelope June was holding. Homeowners insurance. Vern's house hasn't changed. Same roof, same square footage, same address. But the insurance company's risk model changed. A report from the Consumer Federation of America found that homeowner premiums rose 24% nationally between 2021 and 2024. Data from LendingTree puts the cumulative increase at 46.8% from 2020 to 2025. Vern didn't file a claim, didn't add a room, didn't move to a flood zone. His premium went up because the math behind the policy changed: more severe weather patterns, higher rebuilding costs, carriers pulling out of entire states. He's paying for a risk recalculation he never asked for. Second envelope, property tax reassessment. Vern's home value went up on paper. He didn't sell, didn't renovate, didn't ask for a reappraisal. But the county did one anyway, because home values in his zip code rose, and the county's revenue formula follows the assessed value. Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows that housing costs for Americans 65 and older averaged $22,193 a year in 2024. In 2020, the same category was $17,441. That's a 27% increase in 4 years for a population that by definition isn't buying new houses. So here's the picture. Vern eliminated about $6,600 a year in work-related costs. But his insurance, his Medicare, and his property tax have been rising at rates that the Social Security adjustment was never designed to match. The costs he cut were real. The costs that replaced them grow faster. And the tool Vern used to project all of this, that blue ink notebook, used one inflation rate for everything. He needed 3. Let's go back to that backyard. Same grill, same chain link fence, but Vern is 70 now, and the notebook in the nightstand says one thing, the bank account says another. Here's what the notebook projected for year 8. Vern took his $4,000 a month budget, applied a general inflation rate of about 2.5% per year, and figured his expenses at 70 would be somewhere around $4,850 a month. His Social Security would adjust with the cost of living increase each year. His pension stays flat. It's the same $2,800 every month it was on day one. No adjustment, no inflation clause. Just a number that was generous in year 1 and gets a little less generous every year after. Here's what actually happened. The expenses Vern controls eating out, the beach trip, the grandson's birthday, he actually cut back on those. Not because he had to, because he slowed down. The spending smile at work. Blanchett's data says real discretionary spending drops about 1% a year through a retiree's 70s. Vern fits the pattern, but the expenses Vern doesn't control followed a different curve. His Medicare Part B premium didn't grow at 2.5%. It grew at roughly 7 to 10% in the years that mattered most. His homeowner's insurance jumped twice in 3 years. His property tax followed the county reassessment cycle up every time, never down. The $400 monthly cushion Vern had at 62, it's gone. Not dramatically, not in a single month. It eroded $50 here, $30 there, a premium adjustment in January, a reassessment notice in March, each one small enough to shrug off. Together, they ate the margin. And now here's the part. June already knew. She'd been doing the split for 2 years, not because a financial advisor told her to, not because she read it in a magazine, but because the bills stopped making sense when she looked at them as one number. The total kept going down, but the checking account didn't feel like it was going up. So she did what Vern should have done with the notebook. She made 2 piles. Left pile, things they could cancel tomorrow if they wanted to. The restaurant on Friday nights, the streaming subscriptions, June's book club membership, gifts for the grandkid, the Myrtle Beach trip. Everything that's a choice. Right pile. Things that show up every month whether they agreed to them or not. The homeowner's insurance, the Medicare premium, the Medigap supplement, the property tax, the electric bill, utilities. Everything that arrives in an envelope and doesn't ask permission. When Vern retired, the left pile was bigger. Not by a lot, but enough that the budget felt flexible. By year 5, they were roughly even. By year 8, by the day she's standing at that counter with both hands flat on the granite and 2 envelopes, she already knows the direction of the right pile is larger. For the first time since Vern retired, the costs they can't negotiate outweigh the costs they can. And here's what the last 3 Januaries looked like. Every January, Social Security deposits a cost of living adjustment, a bump, the system's way of saying, we know things got more expensive, here's a little more. And every January, the combined increases in Medicare, insurance, and property tax exceeded that adjustment. Not by a dramatic amount, by about $40 in year 6, $60 in year 7, $80 in year 8, the kind of numbers that don't trigger a crisis, the kind you absorb without noticing, the kind that over a decade quietly restructure a budget from the inside out like termites in a wall that still looks solid from the street. And this is where most people stop the analysis, because the next 8 years are the ones nobody wants to model. Vern is 78. The grill still works, but he uses it maybe once a month now, down from every weekend. June sends her casserole to the IBEW cookout with a neighbor. They don't always make the drive themselves anymore. The grandson is in college, 2 hours away, and calls on Sundays. Myrtle Beach was 3 years ago. The deck boards Vern replaced at 64 are starting to look like they need it again, but he hasn't decided whether to call someone or do it himself. His hands say yes, his knees say wait. His back doesn't vote, it vetoes. His spending has dropped. Measurably, visibly. Blanchette's research, updated in 2026, confirms the pattern real spending for the median retiree decreases by roughly 26% by age 84. Vern is tracking that curve almost perfectly. He eats out less, buys less, drives less. The Myrtle Beach money is gone. The home project money has slowed to a trickle. By every total spending measure, Vern is cheaper to run at 78 than he was at 62. And if you only looked at the total, you'd say the plan worked. But the composition has almost fully inverted. The discretionary slice, the things Vern chooses to spend on, has shrunk to a fraction of what it was. The fixed slice Medicare premiums, Medigap supplemental coverage, out-of-pocket copays, prescriptions, homeowners insurance, property tax now dominates the budget. His pension is still $2,800 a month. It buys less than it did 16 years ago because it was never designed to keep pace with anything. His Social Security has grown with the cost of living adjustments, but those adjustments tracked general inflation, not healthcare inflation, not insurance inflation, not property tax inflation. HealthView Services published a projection in 2026 that stopped people mid-sentence. For a healthy 65-year-old couple, up to 84% of their lifetime Social Security benefits could go to healthcare costs alone, not total expenses. Not housing and healthcare combined. Healthcare. Vern isn't in crisis. He's not broke. He's not choosing between food and medicine. That's a different story and a darker one. But he has less freedom at 78 than he had at 62, even though he spends less. Because the share of his budget that represents choice has been replaced, dollar by dollar, by the share that represents obligation. He's spending less and keeping less of what's left. Now, does this mean the assumption is always wrong? No. And being honest about that matters, because this video isn't here to scare you. It's here to show you where the assumption holds and where it breaks. If you have employer-provided retiree healthcare coverage and some union contracts, some government pensions, some large companies still offer this, then the single biggest variable in this entire equation changes in your favor. Vern's IBEW pension didn't include it. Some do. That one difference rewrites the math. If you're in a state with property tax caps or freezes for seniors, Texas has a freeze for homeowners over 65, for example, then that second envelope doesn't grow the same way. The county can reassess all it wants. Your bill stays flat. If you downsized, sold the 4-bedroom, and moved into a condo, a smaller house, a different zip code, your insurance premium, and your tax base reset, you're not dragging the old assessment behind you like an anchor. And for the median retiree who avoids a major healthcare event, total spending really does decline and stays down. Blanchette's latest research calls this pattern the smirk spending that drops and never curves back up. No smile, no late life spike. Just a gradual, voluntary reduction in how much goes out the door. The assumption isn't wrong in absolute terms. It's incomplete. It works for the total. It fails for the composition. And whether it fails for you depends on which of those conditions you can check off before you hand in your badge. So who's right? The people who say retirement gets cheaper, or the data that says it doesn't? Both. And that's the problem. because when both sides are right, the answer depends entirely on which question you're asking. Total spending goes down. The Bureau of Labor Statistics confirms it. Blanchette's research confirms it. Vern's own bank account confirms it. If you look at one number, the total that goes out the door every month, retirement is cheaper than working. That's not an opinion. It's arithmetic. But retirement costs are not one number. They're two columns, and nobody talks about the split. The left column is everything you choose, where you eat, where you travel, what you buy for the grandkid, whether you go to Myrtle Beach this year or skip it. The right column is everything you owe, what Medicare charges, what the insurance company recalculates, what the county reassesses. The left column gets smaller every year because you slow down. That's natural. That's the spending smile. The right column gets bigger every year because it follows a different clock: healthcare inflation, insurance inflation, property tax cycles. Clocks that have nothing to do with your cost of living adjustment and never will. Remember Greg leaning on the chain link fence with the Budweiser, the sun going down behind the pines, saying it sounds like freedom? He wasn't wrong. It is freedom, but it's a freedom with a bill that changes composition every January. The total on the bill goes down, the share of the bill you have no say over goes up. And if you only plan for the total, if you only looked at one number, the way Vern did, the way the calculators do, the way everybody does, you plan for the wrong thing. Vern's blue ink notebook got the total right. It missed the split. He didn't need more money at 62. He needed to know that 3 of his costs were going to rise at a rate that his income was never designed to match. Healthcare at 5.8%, insurance at 8 to 10%. In the years that hit hardest, property tax at whatever the county decides his house is worth. On paper, a number Vern has no vote in. The answer to does retirement get cheaper is this. It depends on what you mean by retirement costs. If you mean the total, yes, the data says so. If you mean the part you can't cancel, no. And it's that part, the right column, the mandatory column, the column that grows while the other one shrinks, that decides whether you're comfortable or just getting by. If Vern could go back to 62 and rewrite that notebook, he wouldn't save more. He'd separate the math. 3 columns instead of 1. Groceries, travel, gifts, regular inflation, healthcare and Medicare, its own rate, insurance and property tax, their own rate. The projection doesn't fail because the numbers are wrong. It fails because it uses one speed for 3 things moving at 3 different speeds. And if you think this only matters for people on a fixed pension, wait until you see what happens when you add investment withdrawals into the equation. Because inflation doesn't just eat your spending, it eats the portfolio you're pulling from. And the math on that one is even less forgiving. If you want to see what that looks like, subscribe. Vern's notebook wasn't wrong. It just wasn't finished. Make sure yours is.